high. Shake for a shake. I'm throwing these Emirates in the sky. Spinning this Assalamu alaikum. Peace to Money. I love my beaches, South beaches, surfboard and high tide. I can just roll up, cause I'm swole up. So that birthday cake get the Cobra. Bugatti for real, I'm Cobra. The autobiography rover. Got the key to my city, it's over. No thoughts, only in the color covers. I said rackets, wretches, hold up.
I said rackets, wretches, hold up.
I know who you came here to see. If you a freak, then you come on with me. And I know what you came here to do. Now bust it open, let me see you get loose. It's going down for real.
Sports has been around for centuries. The name extreme sports did not come to name until around the early 1970s. While extreme sports got its name around the 1970s, they did not actually gain very much popularity until the 1990s. Many extreme sports are non-traditional and require participants to combine athletic skill with pronounced risk. The most popular extreme sports are considered skiing, snowboarding, mountain biking, inline skating, and whitewater kayaking. Many people participate in extreme sports because it is free and in an uncontrolled environment. The adrenaline rush people get from extreme sports is one reason why many people enjoy it so much.
Now bust it open, let me see you get loose. It's going down for real. 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 It's going down for real.
Drop it, shake it, pop it, lift it, drop it, shake it, pop it, lift it, drop it, shake it, pop it, lift it, drop it, shake
It's
it.
going down for real. It's 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 going down for real.
The X Games were founded in 1995 and consisted of sports such as skateboarding, BMXing, and motocross. The Winter X Games were founded 2 years later in 1997, and their sports included snowmobiling, snowboarding, skiing, and ski jumping.
A large part of the demographics of extreme sports consists of mostly Caucasian males, but there's been a slight integration of minority groups consisting of African American and Hispanics in the later years.
Action and extreme sports participants are more likely to be male and of the younger demographic between the ages of 6 and 24. They tend to live in higher income households, and they also likely to have an unusual personality. They consider themselves unconventional, enjoy traveling, the unbeaten path, and like to take risks.
Girl said you hallelujah. Girl said you hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday night and we in the spot. Don't believe me, just watch. Come on. Don't believe me, just watch. 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 Hey, 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 oh.
The 1980s saw the growth of the environmental justice movement, which argued that all people have a right to a safe and healthy environment. Those concerned with environmental justice argued that poor and minority Americans are subjected to disproportionate environmental risk. It concentrated on issues like urban air pollution, lead paint, and transfer stations for municipal garbage and hazardous waste. Environmental justice organizations widened the support base for environmentalism, which had traditionally relied upon the educated, white, and middle class. Often, low-income and minority communities are subjected to environmental racism and located close to highways, garbage dumps, and factories, where they are exposed to greater pollution and environmental health risk than the rest of the population. The environmental justice movement seeks to link social and ecological environmental concerns, while at the same time keeping environmentalists conscious of the dynamics in their own movement, like racism, sexism, homophobia, and classism of dominant culture. The success of the environmental justice movement in bringing the racial and class dimensions of environmental dangers to the nation's attention was reflected in the creation of the Office of Environmental Justice by the EPA in 1992. The Superfund Act was formed in the 1980s. These laws regulated public drinking water systems, toxic substances, pesticides, and ocean dumping, and protected wildlife, wilderness, and wild and scenic rivers. Moreover, new laws provide for pollution research, standard setting, contaminated site cleanup, monitoring, and enforcement, setting aside large amounts of money to clean up hazardous waste sites across the United States.
Because their concerns were locally oriented and generally consisted of removal of specific environmental threats, they were referred to as NIMBY, Not in My Backyard organizations. In response to the flurry of environmental regulations passed by Congress in the 1970s, the EPA expanded its operations. It began with a staff of 8,000 and a budget of $455 million, and by 1981 had a staff of nearly 13,000 and a budget of $1.3 billion. New environmental laws were passed, including the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act amendments of 1984 and Safe Water Act amendments of 1986, and the Superfund amendments and Reauthorization Acts of 1986. The environmental regulations put in place in the 1960s and 70s had led to a cleaner air and water. In 1997, the EPA reported that the airways the cleanest it had been since the EPA began record in 1970. The emission of 6 major pollutions were down by 31%, and in 2000 the EPA reported that release of toxic materials into the environment had declined 42% since 1988. The EPA also estimated that 70% of major lakes, rivers, and streams were safe for swimming and fishing, twice the figure of the 1970. The dramatic cleanup of formerly contaminated rivers such as the Geauga and the Potomac was further evidence that the anti-pollution efforts were having their desired effects.
Hip-hop is a form of popular music comprised of mainly 4 elements: MCing, DJing, graffiti, and breakdancing. Hip-hop is considered a cultural lifestyle that impacts fashion trends, lingo, and attitudes. Rap is a form of music that originated from the hip-hop culture. Hip-hop is a lifestyle with its own lingo, dress code, etc. KRS-One once said, "Hip-hop is something you live. Rap is something you do." A product of cross-cultural integration, rap is deeply rooted within ancient African culture and oral tradition. Hip-hop is believed to have originated in the Bronx by a Jamaican DJ named Kool Herc. Herc's style of DJ involved reciting rhymes over instrumentals at house parties. Herc would rap with the microphone using a myriad of in-house references. An amalgamation of sounds that include elements of soul, jazz, gospel, rock, and live instrumentation. The likes of De La Soul, A Tribe Called Quest, and most recently Kanye West are recognized for championing the soulful rap movement. Others like Azalea Banks and Goldlink tend to blend hip-hop with elements of dance music. Busy Bee Starsky, DJ Hollywood, and DJ Africa Bambaataa, founder of the Zulu Nation in New York, are the three New York artists who have been credited for coining the term hip-hop. This genre began in the 1970s with funky beats resonating at house parties, at basement parties, and the streets of New York. According to Geneva Smitherman, the foundation of rap music is rooted in black oral tradition of tonal semantics, narrativizing, signification, playing the dozens, African syntax, and other communicative practices. One can trace the commercial history of rap back to 1979, when Sugar Hill Gang produced the enormously successful song entitled Rapper's Delight. Rap music was a way that urban black youth expressed themselves in a rhythmic form. Rap music, along with graffiti and breakdancing, was the poetry of the street. The collective message of rap told canon stories of the urban streets, stories of drugs, violence, and crime. No matter how hedonistic the message, urban youth found a platform to outwardly express their rage towards the system. To them, the police embodied the system. They were indeed a reflection of America's attitude towards them. Hence, vicious verbal attacks on police behavior reflected urban youth's most intimate conceptualization of the system. According to Patricia Rose, rap music continued to blossom after the release of Rapper's Delight. It was discovered by the music industry, the film industry, and the print media. Artists such as Run DMC, Houdini, and the Fat Boys helped what seemed like a fleeting phenomenon persist in changing popular culture. Hip-hop is the constantly evolving spirit and consciousness of urban youth that keeps recreating itself in a never-ending cycle. It is joy, sorrow, pleasure, pain, victory, defeat, anger, happiness, confusion, clarity, humor, intensity, dream, nightmare, life, death, and everything else in between. It is the spirit that connects the past to the present and lays a path toward the future. The spirit of hip-hop is the same as jazz, reggae, blues, doo-wop, bebop, and a multitude of other types of expressions, be it musical or otherwise, that African people throughout the diaspora have given birth to and introduced to the world. That very spirit is what breathes life into a simple idea and transforms it into a living cultural movement. Hip-hop culture cannot be assimilated, integrated, diluted, watered down, sold for profit, or pimped. It will always exist in this incarnation or another. What the mainstream promotes as hip-hop is only a commercial product misleading you into believing that it represents hip-hop in its totality. Today, hip-hop is no longer limited to rap music and breakdancing. Today, it represents a multi-billion-dollar industry that influences everything from automotive design and fashion to primetime television programming, collegiate and professional sports, mass media marketing, and Madison Avenue advertising. Today, hip-hop is many a way of life, a culture that is intricately woven into every aspect of young people's daily lives.